welcome everyone to SOAS. Apologies for this delay. SOAS being SOAS, we had some problems with printers today, so we are all kind of a piece of paper here and there. So my name is Lucia Dolce, and for those who have not been here, I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the Center for Buddhist Studies here at SOAS to the Robert H. Ho lecture series in Chinese Buddhism. As you would know, this lecture series consists of 3 sessions per year dedicated to different aspects of Chinese Buddhism, historical, art historical, contemporary. So today we'll be kind of filling two sessions, both the art historical and the historical, I think, with this lecture. Also, I think you know that the public lecture is followed by a seminar tomorrow morning, and I hope you have registered, or those of you, especially graduate students who have not registered, are most welcome to join us. That's a great occasion for all of us to get closer to material and to methodologies. So I like to take this occasion to thank our sponsors whose generosity has allowed us to get closer to groundbreaking research in Chinese Buddhism. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce this evening's speaker. Professor Young-Mi Kim is a professor of art history at Ehwa Women's University in Seoul, Korea. Professor Kim is a specialist of Chinese and Korean Buddhism. She has been at Ehwa since 2017, I think, and before that she was at Yale and before at Hoya University. Well, she has a PhD from Harvard on the topic on which she will talk about today, Liao Buddhism, art and architecture and ritual, actually. I think her, on this topic, she is completing a monograph just right now. And it's a very important topic, and you will see that it's also interesting how both architecture and ritual has served as an intercultural motif across Asia. Particularly interested in the relation with Japan that can be traced back to the Liao dynasty. I also want to say a few more about other aspects of her research which are equally fascinating. She has worked on different aspects of the material culture of Buddhism and edited 2 special issues of journals, one on dhāraṇī and mantras, and one on Pokchang, which is a favorite of mine. It's an issue of Cahiers d'Extrématie, co-edited with James Robson and others. And I think it's Pokchang are all the stuff that is put inside Buddhist statues across Asia. So this is really an Asian practice. But we knew very little about what was the peculiarity of Korea before your work and your colleagues' work. So I think this is an amazing contribution to our understanding of devotional practices. Well, maybe I shouldn't say much more, but I just wanted to say that also Professor Kim has been the recipient of many awards, and one of that is particularly relevant to today, which is a Robert Ho Foundation Research Fellowship in 2018 and 2019. So maybe that's enough for me, and without further ado, I'd like to invite you to welcome Professor Kim to SOAS, and I'll leave you the floor. Thank you for being here. And I'll there.
Well, it's my honor to be here, and I want to express my thankfulness to Lucia for inviting me here, and I am also thankful to everyone here for coming to my lecture on this sunny evening. Okay. I hope that you will enjoy my talk, and let me begin. The Liao Empire, founded by the nomadic Khitan people, probably remains unfamiliar territory to many of you seated in this lecture hall today. Despite its profound historical and cultural significance, The dynasty has been largely overlooked in Buddhist studies for multiple reasons. Following their imperial foundation, the Khitans embarked on an extraordinary Buddhist patronage campaign, constructing numerous temples, meticulously compiling vast Buddhist canons, and producing scholarly commentaries on Buddhist scriptures. However, the majority of these cultural treasures vanished after the empire collapsed in 1125. The harsh climate of northern China and Mongolia proved particularly unforgiving to wooden structures. Despite these considerable losses, the monumental pagodas that survived from the Liao period serve as eloquent witnesses to the remarkable cultural sophistication that flourished under this semi-nomadic, multicultural empire. Their enclosed relic crypts offer invaluable windows into the otherwise vanished ritual and religious practices of Liao Buddhism. Exploration of these surviving structures reveals that the Liao Empire catalyzed a profound transformation in Buddhist ritual practices and fundamentally reconceptualized sacred space across East Asia during this critical middle period. As I will show in this lecture, the Liao Buddhist pagodas transcended their conventional role as architectural repositories for Buddha relics, functioning simultaneously as sophisticated ritual spaces. More precisely, these structures functioned as carefully designed environments for activating dhāraṇī, or Buddhist incantations. What makes these pagodas particularly significant is how their interior spaces were engineered to perform dhāraṇī rituals with minimal human intervention. The Chaoyang North Pagoda in present-day Liaoning province offers perhaps the most compelling evidence for understanding this architectural innovation. In 1988, archaeologists discovered a relic crypt embedded within the pagoda's 12th eave. After the excavation, the relic crypt, composed of 6 stone panels, was relocated to the North Pagoda Museum, where it is now displayed with its front panel opened. The inner walls of the crypt was fully engraved with sophisticated images, and the most extraordinary among them is a mandala incised on its main wall. Because mandalas serve as essential components in esoteric Buddhist rituals, finding one inside this tiny relic crypt, a space far too confined for any human ritual performances, presents a perplexing mystery. Moreover, the pagoda has no stairway or access point leading to the relic crypt inside the 12th eave, making it completely inaccessible after construction. Paradoxically, though humans could never access this space, the relic crypt was carefully designed as a ritual altar. The diagram on the wall represents the specific mandala used for reciting the Buddhist dhāraṇī, known as the superlative spell. Since the Tang dynasty, this dhāraṇī was widely chanted and inscribed on octagonal pillars to extend one's lifespan and expiate negative karma. The rectangular configuration and iconography of the Liao mandala adhere precisely to ritual mandala translated by Amoghavajra. Furthermore, miniature pagodas containing inscriptions of the superlative spell were positioned at the center of the relic crypt. The overall composition of the relic crypt corresponds to the ritual altar used for chanting this same dhāraṇī in Japan's esoteric Shingon school. In Japan, the ritual was called Nyoho Sonsho ritual. The Liao and Japanese miniature pagodas share numerous features, from iconographic details to the objects contained within. In essence, both Tang Dynasty ritual manuals and Japanese historical records confirm that this relic crypt within the pagoda functions as a ritual altar. This raises an intriguing question. Was the relic crypt conceived as a ritual space, but one not meant for human participation? Several physical characteristics suggest the ritual altar was specifically designed to exclude human participation. Most notably, the altar is not merely small, but genuinely miniature. While comparable Japanese pagodas used for similar rituals measured approximately 89 centimeters tall, their Liao counterparts stood at just about 39 and 60 centimeters. Furthermore, miniaturized ritual apparatuses discovered within the same relic crypt also suggest that the altar was deliberately designed as a scaled-down version of a standard altar. Compared to actual implements used in esoteric Buddhist rituals, these miniatures are far too small to function as practical ritual apparatuses. They're about this small, very, very small. This deliberate distortion of scale has frequently appeared across various visual traditions as a signal that objects were not intended for conventional use. For example, in ancient Chinese tomb traditions, miniaturization served as a technique for distinguishing mingqi, or spirit articles made specifically for burial for the tomb occupant, rather than for use by the living. This is why so many ancient Chinese tombs contain miniatures, from small ritual bronze vessels to detailed models showing banquets and festivals. Similarly, the miniaturized Buddhist ritual altar enclosed within the Liao Pagoda possesses a distinct ontological status that is fundamentally different from full-size ritual altars used by human practitioners in actual ceremonies. Moreover, the door on the south wall of the relic crypt is not functional, but merely an engraved image that no human could physically pass through, effectively barring access to the space. Invisibility represents another significant characteristic indicating the space wasn't designed for human participation. All the images engraved on the walls, including the mandala, are engraved with such delicate, sophisticated lines that they effectively evade human perception. Only under specialized lighting can portions of the engravings be discerned, and it was primarily through rubbing techniques that researchers were able to fully capture these images. Viewed through the lens of Buddhist ontology, this relic crypt, though lacking human actors, was far from a mere collection of inanimate objects. Unlike our modern animate-inanimate dichotomy, traditional Buddhist thought distinguished between sentient and insentient beings, while early Indian Buddhist texts argued that insentient beings such as walls, tiles, and stones lack Buddha nature. Chinese Buddhism after the 8th century largely eliminated the distinction between mind and matter, supporting the idea that insentient beings could also attain awakening and Buddhahood. From the perspective of Buddhist belief systems, the relic crypt inside the Choyang Pagoda houses powerful non-human entities possessing their own material agencies. First, the Buddha relics enshrined in the crypt were not merely bodily fragments, but rather were venerated as Buddha's living presence. As Gregory Chopin and other scholars have demonstrated, in Indian society, the Buddha relics could possess property like living people, and East Asian miracle tales describe relic magically appearing, disappearing, and performing various wonders. Thus, the Buddha relics in the relic crypt functioned as the animate presence of the Buddha himself. Second, the mandala engraved on the crypt's main wall also served as a living actant. As Robert Sharf showed, a mandala wasn't just a representation, but was treated as the presence of the actual Buddha or Bodhisattvas invoked for the ritual in the esoteric Buddhist tradition. So same here. Third, the inscriptions of the superlative spell enshrined in the miniature pagodas were potent entities that could heal the dying and remove bad karma. The scripture of the superlative spell instructs people to place them inside a pagoda's top section, extending protective power to anyone contacting even the pagoda's shadow or dust blown from the pagoda. As Paul Kopp's research shows, once inscribed on stone or matter, the superlative spell was believed to generate endless blessings through non-human agency. However, in the case of the Choyang Pagoda, the Liao Buddhists went beyond simply placing an inscription of the spell. They insert these inscriptions as constituents of an elaborate ritual altar specifically designed for chanting the superlative spell. This practice of installing ritual altars appears in other Liao contexts as well, such as the tombs discovered at Xuanhua in Zhangjiakou, Hebei province. For instance, the tomb number IM7 at Xuanhua enshrines two wooden ritual altars positioned in front of the coffin in the main chamber. These altar tables, following Confucian traditions of ancestral worship, feature various porcelain vessels and bottles containing food offerings. Notably, some of the porcelain bowls in this archaeological photograph still contain wooden ladles and spoons purposefully arranged to simulate the ceremonial serving of food to ancestors. As a matter of fact, we can find more examples of tombs and pagodas containing elements of religious rituals inside them. My former advisor, Eugene Wang at Harvard University, has illuminated how Chinese tombs and pagodas create what he calls virtual ritual by embodying the temporal processes of various ceremonies through visual programs engraved and painted on their reliquary sets and coffins. What makes the Choyang North Pagoda distinctive is how it transforms this inner space into a virtual ritual more directly and explicitly by physically installing a ritual altar. Yeah, in the previous examples, we don't find actual altar inserted inside the pagoda. I define virtual ritual as a ritual primarily enacted by non-human agents rather than human actors. Like human beings play only the secondary role. Most ritual theorists share an assumption that ritual should be understood primarily as human action. This anthropocentric tendency in current ritual theories leaves ritual elements found in tombs and pagodas just as enigmatic, mysterious cases. It is time to move beyond this anthropocentric notion to broaden our understanding of rituals practiced across various religious traditions. A chapter of my book on Liao Pagodas, which I am currently writing, discusses how to theorize the virtual ritual. Physical and conceptual miniaturization, concealment, and nested containment are common strategies that instill material agency in networks of non-human actants, allowing them to enact virtual rituals without continued human intervention. Now let's return to the Chaoyang Pagoda to examine why the builders insert a ritual altar instead of performing an actual ritual. What advantages might this virtual ritual offer compared to traditional ceremonies performed by human practitioners? From the image perspective of Buddhists in pre-modern times, the virtual ritual inserted in structures like the Chaoyang Pagoda offered several distinct advantages. First and foremost was its transcendence of temporal limitation. While conventional rituals by a human chanter inevitably conclude, the virtual ritual enacted through material agency could theoretically continue into perpetuity, creating what medieval Buddhists may have envisioned as an eternal ritual chamber with perpetual efficacy. Precision through automatization offered another crucial advantage. Since East Asian Buddhist spells were Sanskrit transliterations, human chanters risked pronunciation errors that could nullify ritual efficacy. Virtual rituals eliminated these concerns, functioning like Tibetan prayer walls and flags that produced flawless symbolic recitation when activated by natural elements or human hands, bypassing the risk of vocal chanting entirely. The miniature altar sealed within the pagoda thus served as a sacred device generating perpetual flawless symbolic chanting, extending boundless protection and blessings. The Chaoyang Pagoda employed another sophisticated strategy that not only perpetuated the ritual's efficacy through time, but also maximized its spatial influence. To understand this spatial dimension, we should examine the iconographic program of the pagoda's exterior walls. The ground story of the Chaoyang Pagoda features 8 intriguing miniature pagodas. Why were these miniature structures incorporated into the exterior design? Their cartouches, engraving the name of each miniature pagoda, reveal that they represent the stupas marking the 8 great sacred sites in India. Places where the historical Buddha was born, attained awakening, preached, performed miracles, and entered final nirvana. For Liao Buddhists living far from the Buddha's homeland, the Chaoyang Pagoda's 8 miniature pagodas enabled a virtual pilgrimage, transforming traditional pagoda circumambulation into a miniaturized journey to India's sacred places. These miniature pagodas serve a second crucial function. They transform the Chaoyang Pagoda into an embodiment of infinitely framed cosmos, creating a spatial counterpart to the temporal infinity of the virtual ritual. Close visual analysis reveals that the miniature structures were not only replicas of Indian stupas, but also miniature avatars of the Chaoyang Pagoda itself. First, both the main pagoda and its miniature versions feature 4-sided plans rather than octagonal designs. Second, both display exactly 13 eaves rising from their ground stories. Third, both include lotus pedestals supporting their bodies. Finally, and most distinctively, both have a proportionally large ground story with a seated Buddha image at its center. In short, the 8 miniature pagodas were intentionally designed as miniature replicas of the Chaoyang-North Pagoda itself. As replicas attached to their original, they create a fascinating mental vision. Since these 8 miniature pagodas replicate the main structure, we can conceptualize that each miniature pagodas would in turn bear smaller versions on its own exterior. These conceptual second-level miniatures would in turn have even smaller pagodas on their surfaces. This multiplication of miniature pagodas theoretically continues without end. This infinite self-replication transforms the physically limited architectural space into an infinitely framed, fractal-like structure extending in 3 dimensions. This visual device effectively materializes the infinitely nested cosmology of Huayan, or flower garland Buddhism. The most distinctive characteristic of Liao Buddhism is the synthesis of Huayan Buddhist teaching with esoteric Buddhist ritual practices. This seamless integration of the 2 traditions is elegantly reflected in the design of the Chaoyang-North Pagoda as well. In Huayan Buddhism, its unique cosmology plays a crucial role in explaining the interconnectedness of all beings and the interpenetration of all phenomena throughout the universe. The flower garland Buddhist literature describes this infinitely layered cosmos using the metaphor of the Indra's net, a jeweled net in which each individual jewel reflects all the other jewels in the net, with these reflections themselves containing further reflections, continuing infinitely. Fa Zhang, the 3rd patriarch of flower garland Buddhism, created an elaborate mirror installation for his disciples to visualize such Huayan cosmos, which successfully demonstrated the fundamental Huayan teaching that one is all and all is one. The vision created by Liao's miniature pagodas also transforms the Chaoyang-North Pagoda into an architectural epitome of the flower garland Buddhism's endlessly layered cosmos. And inside this pagoda, there are texture evidences and other materials which shows connections with Huayan cosmos. And we can talk more about it during the Q&A if you're curious about it. Okay. The version created by Liao's miniature pagodas also transforms the Chaoyang-North Pagoda into an architectural epitome of the flower garland Buddhism's endlessly layered cosmos. As the Chaoyang-North Pagoda conceptually multiplies through these miniature devices, the ritual altar inside it would also be mentally replicated for venerators, creating not just temporal perpetuity, but spatial boundlessness for the ritual efficacy. Thus, the potent incantation sealed within the Buddha's inner chamber extends its protection and blessings infinitely in both time and space. The Chaoyang-North Pagoda's design mirrors a contemplative practices documented in Liao Buddhism. This practice, called visualization on infinite interest net, is explained in the writings of Liao monk Daozhen. In this visualization technique, practitioners mentally construct an endless cosmic framework while performing ritual actions within this Huayan cosmos. This generates immense merit through the multiplication of ritual efficacy across the infinitely replicating cosmic structure. The parallel is striking. Both the pagoda's architecture and this meditation practice employ Huayan cosmology to amplify ritual potency through virtualization. A few years after the completion of the Chaoyang-North Pagoda, these ritual innovations were further developed in another significant structure, the Qingzhou White Pagoda in present-day Bairin left banner in Inner Mongolia. During this pagoda's restoration from 1988 to 1992, archaeologists discovered a large number of wooden miniature pagodas within the 5-chambered relic crypt situated inside the pinnacle of the structure. Many of these miniature pagodas, many of these miniature pagodas contained scrolls of the dhāraṇīs from the pure light scriptures printed with wood blocks. The connection between the pure light scripture and the Qingzhou White Pagoda has been widely recognized, as its dhāraṇīs were also inscribed on the incantation pillars adorning the pagoda's exterior walls. What I wish to emphasize, however, is that the pagoda's relic crypt simultaneously maintained a ritual relationship with the superlative spell as well, the very same spell whose ritual altar was installed inside the Chaoyang Pagoda. The unique ground plan of the Qingzhou White Pagoda's relic crypt, in which 4 chambers surrounded the central chamber in the 4 cardinal directions, has no parallel in other pagodas. Instead, its closest architectural similarity appears surprisingly in ritual altar diagrams from Dunhuang in Western China. For instance, the ritual altar depicted in shrine painting number 174 bears a resemblance to the ground plan of the Qingzhou relic crypt. The inscription above this painted drawn altar explicitly identifies it as an altar for the superlative spell. This similarity between the relic crypts and Dunhuang's ritual altar for the superlative spell transcends mere coincidence, especially considering the spell's presence in the Liao relic crypt. As I will elaborate in my forthcoming book, the dhāraṇī scrolls containing the superlative spell functioned as a vital component in establishing the ritual space within the Qingzhou White Pagoda's relic crypt. These scrolls outline the ritual sequence, beginning with invoking the 3 bodies of the Buddha before chanting the superlative spell. The same 3 Buddhas prominently featured on the east wall of the Chaoyang North Pagoda's relic crypt. While Chaoyang North Pagoda embodied this invocation through visual imagery, Qingzhou White Pagoda achieved identical ritual efficacy through written inscriptions. All this suggests that the Qingzhou White Pagoda was also designed to simulate a ritual altar, establishing another virtual ritual within its concealed monumental structure. What connects these 2 pagodas even more conclusively is the figure of Great Master Xuanyan, who commissioned the scroll containing the superlative spell and supervised both the construction and ritual program of the Chaoyang North Pagoda. Several inscriptions inside the Chaoyang North Pagoda, including the one on the relic crypt's east wall, record his role as the supervisor of the pagoda's construction. According to the excavated stele, the same monk served as chief monastic supervisor for the Qingzhou White Pagoda's construction. This consistent involvement strongly suggests that it was Great Master Xuanyan who deliberately designed the Qingzhou White Pagoda's relic crypt in the form of a ritual altar to enact the believed power of the superlative spell. At the same time, Master Xuanyan modified the ritual approach when he supervised this ritual altar. while he designed the inner space of the Chaoyang North Pagoda exclusively for the enactment of the superlative spell. The relic crypt of the Qingzhou White Pagoda was conceived as a synthesized altar accommodating two distinct dhāraṇī rituals simultaneously. As I mentioned earlier, this relic crypt also enshrined numerous copies of spells from the Pure Light scripture. The practice of enshrining the Pure Light scripture or its dhāraṇīs within miniature pagodas originated in the 8th century Shilla kingdom on the Korean peninsula. Although this Buddhist scripture had minimal impact in Tang China, where it was translated into classical Chinese, Buddhist practitioners in Shilla actively implemented the scripture's instructions, enshrining many miniature pagodas within their larger pagoda structures. As Xue Manshun has suggested, the Liao Empire appears to have enthusiastically adopted this practice from the Korean peninsula, as evidenced by the wooden miniature pagodas containing spells from the Pure Light scriptures in many Liao pagodas. However, the Qingzhou White Pagoda presents an intriguing inconsistency regarding the number of wooden miniature pagodas it contained. While the scripture prescribed enshrining either 77 or 99 copies of the spells, the archaeologists discovered 108 wooden miniature pagodas within the Qingzhou White Pagoda's crypt. Significantly, the number 108 is associated with the superlative spell rather than the Pure Light scripture. For instance, the metal miniature pagoda used in Japanese ritual for chanting the superlative spell contained 108 copies of the spell inscribed on thin copper sheets. These circular sheets formed the 9 tiers of the pagoda's finial section. When we consider the configuration of the ritual altar, the contents of the scrolls enshrined within the wooden miniature pagodas, and their precise number, it appears that the Qingzhou White Pagoda's relic crypt was ingeniously designed to simultaneously enact rituals for the two different types of dhāraṇīs. Our final exploration brings us to the ancient timber pagoda in Shanxi province. One of the most architecturally significant structures in Chinese history, as the oldest and tallest surviving wooden pagoda from pre-modern China. Despite extensive scholarly attention since the early 20th century, this remarkable monument still harbors numerous unsolved mysteries. Most notably, scholars have struggled to identify a coherent organizational principle that might unify the seemingly iconographically disparate groups of statues displayed across its 5 stories. Building upon our previous analysis, I will demonstrate that the ancient timber pagoda was in fact meticulously designed to harness the power of the superlative spell, yet through a method distinctively different from those we had observed in the Chaoyang North Pagoda and Qingzhou White Pagoda. Unlike the concealed ritual altars of the pagodas we've examined, the ancient timber pagoda manifests the ritual process across its 5 ascending stories, creating a vertical sacred journey. The first 3 stories enshrined images embodying the 3 bodies of the Buddha, precisely the deities invoked at the commencement of the superlative spell ritual and depicted on the east wall of the Chaoyang North Pagoda's relic crypt. Upon reaching the 4th story, visitors encounter the historical Buddha Shakyamuni, who originally expounded the efficacy and methodology or methods of the spell in the scripture of the superlative spell. More significantly, a wish-fulfilling jewel, an agate bowl, was found enshrined within this Shakyamuni statue. This discovery provides a crucial link with the spell ritual, as both archaeological evidence from the Chaoyang North Pagoda and historical Shingon school documents confirm that such wish-fulfilling jewels, typically encased in miniature pagodas, became the primary ritual objects, the main object of veneration for the superlative spell ceremonies during the 11th and the 12th centuries. The jewels enshrined in both the Yingshan and Chaoyang North Pagodas share striking similarities, suggesting they served identical ritual functions related to the superlative spell. The uppermost story culminates this ritual journey, where visitors encounter Vajrayana Buddha surrounded by 8 bodhisattvas. They form a 3-dimensional mandala for the superlative spell ritual, as they have the identical configuration of deities appearing in the mandala at the Chaoyang North Pagoda. Thus, the ancient timber pagoda ingeniously unfolds the complete ritual apparatus from bottom to top, beginning with the invoked Buddhas, proceeding to the object of veneration, and culminating in the mandalas, all arranged in precise ritual sequence to activate the spell's efficacy through the visitor's physical ascent of the structure. The architectural genius of the ancient timber pagoda extends beyond mere iconography to the very movements in choreographs within its sacred space. Notice how the stairways between floors are strategically positioned to guide visitors in a clockwise path around the central statues. As one ascends to each new level, the natural flow of movement along the circular aisle surrounding the central statues effortlessly transitions into circumambulation, Buddhism's fundamental devotional act from ancient India to contemporary China. The pagoda thus converts the mundane act of climbing stairs into a bodily enactment of the superlative spell, where the traditionally vocal ritual becomes somatic, with the body itself tracing sacred patterns through carefully designed space. So far, we have examined how the Liao Pagodas embodied ritual spaces for the enactment of Buddhist incantations, each through distinct and innovative approaches. The remaining part of this lecture will examine the female agency behind these innovative monuments. Explorations of the role of Khitan empress dowagers reveals that the constructing pagodas was not simply a religious act, but also a complex social practice in which political aspirations and prayers for the deceased were indivisibly intertwined. Careful examination of surviving texture and visual evidence suggests 2 powerful Khitan women, Empress Dowagers Chinai and Renyi, were behind the construction of these pagodas. Let me first offer a brief introduction to Empress Dowager Chinai. She was initially the second empress to Emperor Xiongzhong, but she assumed the position of Empress Dowager upon her husband's death in 1031 by slandering and executing the first empress. Her 5 brothers, who were powerful political figures in the Liao Empire, facilitated her rise to power. The new young Emperor Xingzong was her biological son, but had been adopted and raised by the first empress, and consequently had greater affection for the first empress whom Chinai had eliminated. Because of this strained relationship, Empress Dowager Chinai attempted to depose the new emperor, but her coup d'etat failed, resulting in her exile. She was 5 years later, she returned to the court and reclaimed her political influence. She was not only politically ambitious, but also a physically formidable woman who eventually outlived her son, Emperor Xingzong, assuming the title of Grand Empress Dowager during her grandson's reign. The excavated stele clearly records that the Qingzhou White Pagoda was constructed by her order. However, the Chaoyangnuth Pagoda lacks documentation regarding its patron. This information was likely lost during the plundering of the pagoda's lower relic crypt long ago. However, circumstantial evidence suggests both structures were commissioned by this powerful Empress Dowager. First, the same monk, Great Master Xuanyan, was hired to supervise both pagoda constructions and their interior ritual space, which suggests the two pagodas' connection. Second, the Ba prefecture, where Chaoyangnuth Pagoda stood, was under her control, as it was one of the 5 prefectures affiliated with her husband's ordo, the personal standing army of the Liao Emperor. In Liao custom, the emperor's ordo was inherited not by the emperor's son, but by his wife. Both the Qing prefecture, where the Qingzhou White Pagoda was located, and the Ba prefecture were administrative regions within Emperor Xiongzhong's ordo. Hence, it became, later inherited by Empress Dowager. For whom was the ritual altar inside the Chaoyangnuth Pagoda prepared, assuming the pagoda was built by the Empress Dowager? The ritual altar was likely prepared for her ailing brothers. After the relic crypt with its ritual altar was completed in the 4th lunar month of 1043, her brother Xiaozhong passed away a few months later, followed by Xiaomu shortly thereafter. These men were influential politicians holding high positions, including Chancellor of the Northern Division and Prime Minister of the Northern Administration. Empress Dowager Qinai was presumably desperate to heal her dying brothers, who were her invaluable political allies. Beyond these historical circumstances, imagery from the pagoda's relic crypt further suggests connections between the ritual and the Empress Dowager's family. The relic crypt's silver and wooden reliquary box features engravings of a man and a woman in royal attire. These royal figures appear on the reliquary box's head panel, which faced the mandala engraved on the relic crypt's main wall, as if to receive the ritual's efficacy. Particularly significant is the scenograph Wang, meaning the king, engraved on the crown of the male figure. Both brothers of Empress Dowager Qinai, who passed away in 1043, were honored with royal titles. Xiaomu received the title of King of Yan in 1023, was later named King of Qin, and ultimately elevated to King of Wu State. Xiaozhong was bestowed the title of King of Chu in 1043. These visual elements collectively suggest that the royal figures on the reliquary box are probably symbolic representations of the Empress Dowager, the primary patron of the pagoda, alongside her brothers for whom the relic crypt's virtual ritual was arranged. Now let us turn to the Qingzhou White Pagoda, which the Empress Dowager commissioned a few years later. Qing Prefecture was both the site of her earlier exile and the mausoleum town for her deceased husband, Emperor Xiongzhong. The construction of the pagoda in Qing Prefecture appears to be connected to the Empress Dowager's declining health. Although the history of Liao records that she was remarkably robust and active throughout her life, even hunting a bear with bow and arrow in her later years, 1047 proved an exception. She experienced deteriorating health throughout this year, facing life-threatening conditions by the fourth lunar month, leading to a prisoner amnesty granted in hopes of her recovery. It was during this challenging period that she ordered the construction of the Qingzhou White Pagoda. Both the superlative spell and the dhāraṇīs from the Pure Light scripture, whose ritual enactment was facilitated by the pagoda's interior altar, were renowned for their efficacy in healing illness, expiating sins, and ensuring favorable rebirth. Notably, the Yongqing-ling near the pagoda was not only her husband's mausoleum, but also her future burial site, given the Khitan tradition of co-interment. Yeah, and later she was actually buried there. Thus, she likely commissioned the pagoda urgently, hoping to restore her health while simultaneously ensuring an auspicious rebirth should the spell rituals fail to cure her, as these spells were also believed to guarantee rebirth in the Pure Land when installed within a pagoda. Lastly, the ancient timber pagoda, our third case study, appears to be connected to another powerful female patron. While this monumental wooden structure is commonly attributed to Emperor Xingzhong or Emperor Daozhong in traditional scholarship, compelling evidence suggests its patron was more likely Empress Dowager Renyi. She was a niece of Empress Qinai, who later married Empress Qinai's son, Emperor Xingzhong. Art historians Chen Mingde and Su Bai, who studied the timber pagoda in the 1960s and 80s, made several significant discoveries. First, Ying Prefecture was Empress Renyi's hometown. Second, Baogongsi, which housed the ancient timber pagoda, was established for Xiao Xiaomu, Empress Dowager Renyi's father. Lastly, the pagoda was constructed around the time Renyi began governing the empire as Empress Dowager. These circumstances strongly indicate that Empress Dowager Renyi built the ancient timber pagoda in her hometown to commemorate her father. Nonetheless, Chen and Su concluded that either her son Daozhong or husband Xingzhong commissioned the structure, a view that still predominates in academia. Despite their eminence as scholars of Chinese art, they perhaps lacked deeper understanding of Liao society, where Khitan elite women wielded extraordinary power and influence. Empress dowagers of the Liao Empire held such authority that the neighboring Song dynasty dispatched separate envoys to the Empress Dowager and the Emperor. Khitan elite women rode horseback and possessed military leadership skills. The history of Liao documents instances where princesses, not Empress Dowager, just princesses, founded their own walled cities. If a princess could establish a city, an Empress Dowager could certainly commission a single pagoda. Indeed, Empress Dowager Renyi's tomb epitaph records that she built numerous baota, or precious pagodas, during her lifetime, one of which may well have been the ancient timber pagoda. Therefore, these powerful Khitan women's contribution to Buddhist history Buddhist pagoda history are thus more significant than previously recognized, as the pagodas they commissioned introduced unprecedented innovations. Under their patronage, pagodas were transformed into perpetual ritual spaces and architectural embodiments of the infinite cosmos conceptualized in Huayan Buddhism. While the Liao Buddhism left relatively sparse documentation, future excavations will undoubtedly illuminate the importance of this empire in East Asian Buddhist history. The influence of the Liao Buddhism on neighboring countries was more extensive than commonly assumed. For instance, traces of the superlative spell ritual preserved in the North Pagoda have helped me understand its subsequent impact on the development of the Nyoho Sonshu ritual in Japan's Shingon ritual. I have also identified scattered influences of Liao Buddhism on various Korean Buddhist practices, including the Pokjang ritual of enshrining sacred objects. Oops, I'm sorry. Where is it? Oh, one is missing. Oh, sorry. There was one more PPT with the image of the Pokjang ritual, but sorry. Pokjang ritual of enshrining sacred objects within newly crafted Buddhist statues, a phenomenon that merits more systematic investigation. Throughout the former Liao territories, dozens of unexcavated pagodas await discovery, offering opportunities to further illuminate Liao Buddhist practices and their profound impact on neighboring cultures. Well, thank you very much for listening to my lecture. Thank you.